Occasionally, I'll hold polls on Twitter. Also, you should follow me so we can be friends, and you can yell at me about stuff. These polls help me decide on what to do next because I like to give into peer pressure. I've actually been wanting to make this video for a while now. While I try to focus on making people laugh and smile through my videos, I sometimes want to dab a little bit into, a more serious tone. Video games can elicit numerous emotions. Outside of screaming because a Madden game went wrong or being pissed off because you died for the 47th time in a Dark Souls game, happens a lot. The sorrow you can get from a video game is unlike any other art form out there. Personally, I've cried over more video games than I have like TV shows or movies, to be honest with you. It honestly seems like games over the last 10 years have really been able to tap into that. So I made a top 10 sad video game deaths because let's cry. Also, there's no Aerith from Final Fantasy VII because, well, it's in every list. I know it's like probably the most iconic game death out there, but I want to focus on other ones. Plus, these ones mean more to me, like it's my own opinion, and also I've never played Final Fantasy VII. Now, while coming up with this top 10, there's one issue. I can't figure out a 10th one. I have my top 9, but number 10? I don't know.
Oh, I am hungry. What do we got in here? I sense it. I must call Wolfkaosaun.
Hello?
You're about to make a sad top 10, aren't you?
How did you know?
Because I can sense these things. Plus, I saw your tweet on Twitter.
Well, I am struggling with my 10th entry.
You're ready to cry? Because I know a video game death that is perfect for that.
I don't think I'll...
A few moments later.
Just put it in. Just put it in.
While this is higher up on my personal list of sad video game deaths, it would be a crime not having it on any list, period. And this character death hits you right at the beginning of a masterpiece called Ori and the Blind Forest. Here we are introduced to our lost protagonist Ori, who is found by a nurturing citizen named Nehru. Within the first 10 minutes, we see Ori and Nehru have a beautiful relationship, filled with fun, constructive activities, and most importantly, love. But when the forest begins to die out from an evil force, there isn't much food left. And all Nehru finds is one single piece of fruit. I think that's an orange? I don't know. And Nehru, being the selfless mother that she is, decides to give it to Ori, even after he offers her a bit. Next we see Ori go out to find piles of food, and as he walks back and sees every good memory they have had together, we know the worst is yet to come. Ori then tries to wake up Nehru to feed her, only she never wakes up, and he is left to fend for himself, all alone.
That is really, really sad.
Well, at least she comes back to life at the end.
Wait, what?
Yep. Near the end, before Ori faces the final boss, she is brought back to life by someone who Ori saved. And at the end, just when we think Ori is about to bite the dust, Nehru's motherly instincts kick in, and the villain of our tale is reminded of the children she lost, and sacrifices herself to save the forest. So in a way, Nehru may not have truly died, but her death at the beginning impacted a ton of players and solidified this game as one of my all-time favorites. So you should definitely play it. And then the sequel, Will of the Wisps.
Throughout my life, there's been certain franchises I clung to ever since I was a kid. Donkey Kong Country, Legend of Zelda, Kirby. But there's no other franchise I purchased more games from than Pokemon. Pokemon Red, Gold, Sapphire, Stadiums 1 and 2, Let's Go, Coliseum, Moon, Fire Red, Pokemon Puzzle League. You get the idea. Many fans of the mainline series have wanted a more serious tone for a future entry, and it's completely understandable. The Pokemon manga, Pokemon Adventures, is actually extremely violent and deals with darker tones such as death. I would actually love to see a game adaptation of the Kanto region based on this manga. Just give it to me, Nintendo, please. Just bring it. But death isn't really prominent in the Pokemon games. It's mostly brushed to the side and never really has an impact on the story. That is, unless you've played Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, specifically the second one. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon has some extremely dark and tear-jerking moments throughout the series, but nothing will ever compare to the ending of Explorers of Time and Darkness. Finally beating the final dungeon, your character has to say his final goodbyes to your trusted partner. You see, You were sent from the future to change the past and essentially save the world. You just recently learned of your fate and you lost a friend in the process. Trudging onward and keeping your fate to yourself, you defeat the final boss, but you altered the past. You no longer exist in the future because of that, so you start to feel that effect. You get an extremely emotional scene where your character says goodbye to their partner. The song that accompanies this scene is one of the best I've ever heard from a Pokemon game. Once your character vanishes from existence, you are treated to a post-credits scene where your partner revisits the times that you spent together, and the grief they express has such an immense weight to it. Flashbacks happen and you truly see what it's like for a friend to fully go through the grief of losing someone so close to them. This list involves numerous characters I've spent hours on end with, whether it be within one game or throughout an entire series. Each of these characters I spent an extremely long time with. However, there are two exceptions to that rule, one being at number 10.
You're welcome for the tears.
Yeah, thanks for that. And the other instance being from The Last of Us.
Within the first 10 minutes, The Last of Us lets you know what kind of experience you're in for. It does your typical tutorial session, teaching you the mechanics as you take care of Sarah. You watch the world around you unravel quickly, and you have to react. But quickly, The Last of Us ensures that you understand this is not your run-of-the-mill zombie game. It's far more than that, and it's not pulling any punches.
Oh no. Sarah. Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. Listen to me, I know this hurts, baby. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. All right, I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby, I know it hurts. Come on, baby, please. I know, baby, I know. Sarah. Baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on. No. No. No, no, no. Please. 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 Please don't. Please.
This scene has some of the greatest voice acting I've ever heard in my entire life. Watching a father hold his daughter in desperation and hearing her gasp, I still get welled up while watching this. It's such a heartbreaking scene, and as soon as this is over, you begin the game. The tutorial is over.
The beginning of The Last of Us perfectly sets the stage for what the rest of the game has in store for you. This may be a Naughty Dog game, but it ain't no Crash Bandicoot or Jak and Daxter, that's for sure. The story will hold nothing back. No character death is off the table, and I won't spoil anything here, but that ending will leave you shocked.
Let me guess. Did Samuel L. Jackson show up and ask Joel to join the Avengers?
Nope, actually Joel puts on a pair of glasses and reveals himself to be Gordon Freeman. You've been playing Half-Life 3 this entire time.
I'm just going to jump out of the gate with this one. I love the Metal Gear franchise. When I was about 9 or 10 years old, I would go over to my best friend's house to play PlayStation games. Outside of Grand Theft Auto, the game we played the most was Metal Gear Solid. From that point forward, I adored the franchise. There's been quite a few extremely sad and somber moments throughout the series. Death is prevalent in this franchise, and so many of them are bitter. I know many people would put one of two deaths here, but I want to go a different route, and just hear me out on this. Big Boss and Metal Gear Solid 4. Admittedly, I love this game more than other people do, but Big Boss's death signified the end of not only Solid Snake's story, but at the time, seemed like a personal goodbye from Hideo Kojima himself, not to his fans, but to his own father. Throughout the Metal Gear games, you can tell there's a paternal story throughout all of them. There's plenty of videos out there that can do this death more justice and take a deeper look at this monumental moment in gaming history than I can, but it was an extremely nostalgic moment for me as this was it. This is the end for Solid Snake's journey. A man no longer held by war. He's finally free.
This is good. Isn't it?
Admittedly, I haven't played many JRPGs. It wasn't until the past 4 years that I started to really dive into this genre. There's just something about camaraderie and a story that allows that to have an effect on everything. That just gets to me, alright? While the next character on this list comes from a game with some extreme flaws, it doesn't take away the impact of their death. At least not for me anyway. Final Fantasy 15 is a game that falls flat in some areas and requires you to know the backstory from outside of the game to fully grasp the entire story. However, even without that knowledge, I grew to really like Noctis, Gladios, Ignis, and Prompto. It was like going on a road trip with some homies and I was just all for it. Near the end of the game, you learn that Noctis' fate is essentially sealed. That he has to fulfill the prophecy and die. There's a lot of story lore to this, so I'm just not gonna get into it because there's a lot. After defeating the final boss, you're met with saying goodbye to your friends. The ones you've spent countless hours with. You even get a heartfelt goodbye between each character before the final day, so it really drives home when you watch this be the end. But here's what really got me. Throughout the game, Prompto takes photos throughout the day randomly, and sometimes you even get these cool photo ops. You save the ones you like, and there can be some really cool shots. Before facing his death, the player gets to go through this photo album one final time. Not only that, but you get to choose your favorite. Noctis then takes a photo with him, sits on the throne, and dies an extremely painful death. But he had something to comfort him in his hour of torment. On his right hand side is the picture, a moment of true happiness. This is the moment that gave him strength to go through with it. It seems like a minuscule thing, but it just shows the kind of love that was between this cast of characters. Granted, you could pick a totally stupid and meaningless picture, which could completely ruin this moment, but thankfully I picked a good one so I was able to fully experience this moment. Not many first-person shooters have spoken to me on an emotional level outside of, well, you know, yelling because of how much I suck at them. I have nostalgia for certain games like Call of Duty's Modern Warfare 2 and Halo 3. The moments with those games were more personal because of the moments I spent with my friends, but one ending really hit me. And even though I knew it was coming, it didn't soften the blow by any means. The Halo franchise has always been enjoyable to me. However, it never really left an emotional impact on me. That is, until I played Halo Reach. The Noble team had sacrificed themselves for their mission. There's a lot of lore to cover with their sacrifices and how it plays into every Halo game, so I'm not going to go into much detail there, but the ending with Noble 6 is what got me. Your character, Noble 6, stays behind to ensure the Pillar of Autumn escaped from attacks by the Covenant. Noble 6 knew that this was the end. He had no means of escape. Reach was burning to the ground. This was it. You are then met with one final objective: survive. You're given one rifle and you're met with an onslaught of enemies. You feel the desperation and the hopelessness. Once you've been damaged enough, you're met with one final cutscene, and arguably my favorite ending shot to a video game. The sacrifices that were made by the Noble team were not in vain. Taking control of Noble 6 during his final moments really drives this death home. Such a great game. Even if you've never played a Halo game before, I can assure you that you'll love this game. I love animals. Dogs, cats, horses, birds.
Bird up.
I love them all, except snakes. I'm completely terrified of snakes. But anytime I see a cat or dog die in a game or movie, I'm immediately sad. Seriously, I watched a movie in the theaters a few years back and they killed a dog, so out of sheer anger, I stood up and threw my hoodie. I mean, there wasn't anyone else in the theater besides me and my friends, but still I had to be overdramatic because you don't kill dogs in movies. That's sad. I hate it. One game that certainly won't make you emotional outside of just pure anger is Dark Souls. That is, unless you pay attention to the story. It can be hard for some to follow, but the game's lore is filled with tragedy. One moment in the first game hits you hard, and it hurts you even worse if you know what's really going on. You reach the Darkroot Garden. You approach the grave of Artorias. You are then quickly met with the guardian of his grave, Sif, the Great Grey Wolf. Now this boss fight alone is quite possibly the saddest I've ever experienced. Once you get Sif towards the lower parts of his health, he will start to limp. His attacks are slower, weaker. Sif will even fail to swing the sword and instead fall over. There's also an alternate cutscene you can get. If you free Sif from the chasm of the abyss before reaching this boss fight, he will recognize your scent. You can clearly tell there's a different expression on Sif's face once he realizes who you are. He reluctantly grabs the great sword, knowing one of you must die. Sif guards this grave to ensure that what happened to his companion, Artorias, happens to no one else. It's the only way you can enter the abyss, and Sif wants to ensure that no one traverses there and has a similar fate to his companion. He will protect it with his life. Here we go. Danganronpa is now one of my favorite gaming franchises. I didn't expect much from the first game, but basically in these games you're put in a school setting where you're trapped by a mechanical bear. You're stuck here forever, but the only way out is to graduate. Now, how does one graduate? Well, you have to kill another classmate and get away with it. A class trial takes place and everyone has to vote on who they think did it. If the culprit gets away with murder, they get to escape. However, all the other students are executed. If the other students figure out who done it, the culprit ends up getting executed instead. However, everyone else goes back to living their school life. The thing with these games is you spend a lot of time with these characters. You end up forming connections and you make friends. You genuinely start to like these characters. There's a ton of tragic moments throughout the series. There's going to be trials and deaths that hit you, and they're going to hit hard. One that hit me the hardest came in Danganronpa V3. In the 4th class trial, you try to figure out who killed one of your classmates, Miu. Long story short, there was a virtual world the class traveled to, and basically if you die in the game, you die for real. After deducing some evidence, you figure out that it's Gonta that committed the murder. But this goes completely against who he is. He's a lovable giant who wanted to protect everyone. He pleads his case, and this scene had some of the most underrated voice acting I've ever heard. Like, Gonta crying is so upsetting.
Sorry. Gonta not really understand, 'cause Gonta not smart boy. But if everyone agree, then everyone probably right. Gonta, trust everyone.
Gonta.
But why? Gonta kill Mew, forget everything. Gonta even think he not do anything bad. And then Gonta tried to blame someone else and make everyone suffer. Why? Why Gonta do such terrible thing?
It turns out that when going into the virtual world, Gonta messed up his headset and doesn't remember anything that happened there. However, in the virtual world, Gonta saw what the outside world truly was like, the one they're unable to escape to, and was filled with so much despair he listened to someone's instructions to kill someone, believing that death for all students was better than the hell outside. So he decides to kill, apologizing profusely while doing so. Once Gonta in real life learns this, he accepts his fate. He apologizes for not being able to keep everyone safe. Seeing everyone's reactions to this death is hard. He was an extremely lovable character. I mean, no one thought that he could do this. I actually had to stop playing for a day or two after this death because he was my favorite in this game. This one was difficult for me to decide on. I wanted to keep this list to one death per franchise, and I had to choose between one of the most iconic deaths in gaming and the most recent death in gaming that truly got to me. Red Dead Redemption and its sequel, Red Dead Redemption 2, are amazing games. I absolutely adore them both.
I honestly don't think you can go wrong with either death here. Both are bitter, they hit you hard, but it goes along with the tone of their games.
That's why I went with Arthur Morgan's death. This game was an emotional roller coaster. It wasn't until this scene where you're riding your horse with this magnificent score called May I playing in the background that I realized I was emotionally invested in this game.
You technically can get 4 different endings to this game. Also, can we bring up the death of your horse too? Because holy crap, that scene was extremely sad and unexpected. The whole final mission is one big emotional masterpiece. How you played the game also affects the fate of Arthur. Depending on if you received high honor or low honor will dictate how Arthur dies. You're met with 2 choices. Go back for the money to help out John Marston, or help John out and get him back to his family. You've been suffering through tuberculosis, and you know your time is up. Also, I have no idea who would choose to go back and get the money from Dutch's stash. Makes no sense.
Essentially, Arthur stays behind to give John a chance to escape to his family. You say a solemn farewell to John, hand him your hat, and seem to go out in a blaze of glory, or so you think. You're met with the traitor of the group, Micah. He was the reason the gang went all up in smokes, the reason why countless friends died. This is the climax. With Arthur crawling towards his gun, you believe that you can finally get your revenge on Micah. You can finally make him suffer for his sins. That is, until you actually reach for the gun.
With Arthur's hand on the hilt, Dutch, your leader and father figure, stamps his foot down on you. With some of his final breaths, Arthur pleads with Dutch, letting out all his emotions, saying some of the most heart-wrenching dialogue you'll hear in a game.
I gave you all I had. I did.
But then Dutch walks off. He was confronted with the monster he became, and the plan he always preached became nothing but a faraway fairy tale. It is then that Arthur crawls to the side of the mountain and lays down, looking at the sunrise. This is accompanied by an a cappella version of May I, driving the point home. As he watches the sunrise one final time, he can take in his final breath knowing that he died doing something good. He performed a loving act.
I'm not going to beat around the bush, I'm just going to cut right to the chase. I love the Walking Dead Telltale games. None I love more than the first season. This one is just a raw, emotional experience. You take control of Lee Everett and try to survive this apocalypse. You take with you Clementine, a little girl who's basically abandoned. Throughout the whole game, you make choices to survive. But the thing I really like about this, it's the fact that you don't just make choices for your survival. You make choices that could affect Clementine. It's done so in a subtle way. You make choices to protect her, and the player can become enthralled in this. She represents hope. She represents innocence. You want to protect her and keep her safe. Deaths happen, extremely difficult choices happen, but the ending... oh my god, that ending. Lee ends up getting bit, and while they try to amputate his arm, it's no use. He's going to die. So you play the final chapter knowing this. Now, everything you do is for her. You know your fate, but hers, you do everything to ensure that she has a future. In the final moments, you're starting to succumb to the virus. You're going to become the undead. Lee and Clementine have an extremely heartfelt one-on-one. It's heartbreaking.
You're strong, Clem. You can do anything.
But I'm little.
Doesn't mean nothing. You go see bad stuff, but it's okay.
But the final decision you make as Clementine. She can either leave Lee handcuffed and have him die there, turning into a walker, or you can shoot him, do a mercy kill. This is her first difficult choice in this apocalyptic world, and you feel every inch of that sadness. Telltale has never been able to recapture this moment, and that goes to show how incredible and emotional it truly was.
Don't be afraid.
Wolf, be honest. How much did you cry?
I don't want to talk about it.
Well, speaking of crying, me and Wolf did a top 10 saddest animated film deaths video on my channel, Ferris Wheel Productions. Or by the time you're watching this, it's called Ferris Wheel Pro, whenever I decide to rebrand it. You know, the spiel, rebranding and stuff. Don't do it, kids. It's bad for your health. But yes, please feel free to visit my channel. I do videos about movies and mostly video games, kind of like Wolfkaosaun, except I'm way more punctual about it. That's a mic drop.
Joey's channel is actually in the description below, and also it's going to be one of the suggested videos at the end of this, so like check him out because he's great. But go check out his channel. Also follow him on Twitter. He's a great person. He makes great content. I can't recommend him enough. Just do it, please. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate you all. My next video is going to be back to, you know, being funny and stuff. It's going to be about whales. Yeah. Again, I appreciate you all, and I'll see you all in the next video. Boom. My hair does a little flop thing.